Hello friends, uh, good morning to all of you. So in this lecture session we'll see in detail about introduction to clinical chemistry, and this lecture is actually a part of first year Pharma D medicinal biochemistry lectures, and here we will see what actually is the chemical composition of cell and how actually it is regulated, what happens in case of malfunction, and how actually biochemistry and diagnosis of a disease are integrated, role of the clinical chemistry laboratory. So outline of all these things is what we are going to see in this lecture. As you all knew, chemistry actually is there behind every physiological reaction, or in one way we can say chemistry runs every physiological action in your body. Let's say if somebody is lifting a weight, flexing muscles, we know that what actually is working over here are skeletal muscles, which are nothing but fibers of muscles, and each fiber is containing specific macro and micro structures within them, and they work in coordination to ultimately help us in lifting a weight. And for a trivial person it looks like lifting weight and flexing muscles, but for us we look at it in a different way. Every one of these fibers is actually a cell. Cell contains various cellular constituents. Because here some work is happening, so we need energy. We need a power source inside our cell. So that is nothing but a mitochondria, and within mitochondria is after all some structure. Okay, so within that, what actually is producing energy is in the form of a chemical, ATP, or otherwise creatinine phosphate. And in another way, because this is energy source, what actually is there between the physical movement here, we have actin and myosin filaments are there. These are proteins compounds, and this is the way how they are arranged. And when you go a little bit deep into that, these are nothing but amino acid chains. Okay, chains made up of amino acids, or polymers made up of amino acids, which are containing specific two-dimensional and three-dimensional structure. Okay, so all these are ultimately working in coordination with each other. So ultimately it is coming out as a physical action. Okay, so this is what I mean by. So let's say if you right now you are listening to this lecture, okay, means the light sound waves are actually hitting at your eardrums, activating certain receptors. So these receptors are producing signals which will go and reach your brain and create some kind of chemical environment over there, which is translated by your brain as a signal. In the same way, your eyes are seeing the screen, and the cones and rods that are there on your cornea are generating certain electrochemical signals which are interpreted by your brain through a complicated mechanism. Ultimately, you are perceiving all these as some kind of a lecture. Okay, so in this way, because in your body, let's say if you from top to bottom, if you observe, so many biochemical reactions are happening continuously. If anywhere, if any biochemical reaction stops, let's say your breathing stops, your body is dead. All the physical structure remains the same, but when the process is deranged, okay, that leads to disease, and if it goes out of our control, it leads to death. Okay, so that is what I mean by chemistry is behind every physiological reaction. General flow of biochemical reactions. So inside our body, how actually the biochemical reactions happen. In basically, okay, so all these biochemical reactions will have an input. So some kind of initiation will be there, some kind of a need, which will switch on a biochemical pathway. So it initiates a series of biochemical reactions to ultimately give you a product or products. So these products are chemicals. They will be useful as inputs for the other biochemical reactions, like in case of bigger biochemical cycles like Krebs cycle, glycolysis, etc. So a product obtained from a biochemical reaction can be used as an input for another biochemical reaction. It is like that. or the chemical will be eliminated. Okay, these are the only two fates that we have inside our body. Okay, because here a need is there, so chemicals are given as input, some biochemical reactions happen, and then it gives you the outcome. But along with the outcome, you always end up with a product. These products will be useful as an input or as an elimination, or will be eliminated. Like you took a wood, okay, and then you burned it. The heat generated over there is used for some product, okay, some application for cooking food or otherwise for boiling water, etc. Ultimately, what is it that is remaining over there is the input, that wood, that whatever we gave became coal. Okay, so this is the way how the coal will be used by somebody for making some other product, or otherwise it is thrown outside. So this is the way how it's a biochemical reactions happen. Okay, so here what we do is we make use of the outcomes for some physiological reaction, but the remaining because it's a chemical reaction, so obviously waste material is going to be generated, so the waste material is to be eliminated. All these reactions are regulated. Okay, so in our biochemistry, several hundreds and millions of biochemical reactions are happening. The only thing is they are happening in a particular harmony, okay, in coordination with each other. So this coordination actually helps us bring out, leverage, okay, some kind of so because all these biochemical reactions, they help us achieve some kind of an objective, some physiological reaction. Okay, it can be beating of a heart, breathing, walking, or sleeping even. Okay, so this is the way. The regulation is what is actually very important. Means sufficient quantity of inputs when converted to products by using appropriate enzymes at a particular rate, and they are used for inputs, they provide inputs at a particular rate, or otherwise they are eliminated at a particular rate, then only the biochemical reaction is going to provide us optimal help, assistance in achieving a biochemical objective, physiological objective. So this regulation is very important. So this is where health and disease status actually is seen. One is inputs, accessibility and availability of inputs, appropriate presence, qualitative and quantitative presence of enzymes, whether they are localized or not sometimes, and qualitative and quantitative information over here. Means qualitative means rate at which an enzyme can function, let's say. Quantitative, qualitative means whether it can do the job or not. Okay, let's say here in the beginning, accessibility and availability. Let's say if a chemical is available, then only a biochemical reaction can happen. If that chemical is absent, biochemical reaction is not going to happen. So that leads to a disease. In case of the middle one, enzymes, whether an enzyme is there or not, yes or no, that is qualitative information. If enzyme is there, but it is not able to provide you, they are not in appropriate numbers. Let's say we need 1000 enzymes are needed, but we have only 10 or 15 are there. Obviously they are going to they are not going to meet the requirement. Then that leads to problem. Then third one is, an enzyme is supposed to function at a particular site only, then it should be there in that particular area only. Let's say a metabolizing enzyme is there, which is supposed to stay inside liver, hepatocyte. But when something happens, it will be leaked into the general circulation. So that enzyme will be there everywhere. Okay. So, and then an enzyme can be there. Sometimes it is modified so that unwanted effects are going to be seen. Okay. Sometimes an enzyme is produced which is not natural. So that type of problem is going to result in a disease. The third one is the product. In case of a product, qualitative and quantitative information regarding that product is going to influence your health or disease condition. Quantitative means, let's say we need adrenaline for working our adrenergic system. Let's say more product is formed. Like in case of pheochromocytoma, a cancer to adrenal gland, you will be getting more adrenaline. So that leads to a disease. Quantitative information regarding product. or qualitative information, because here a product is there or not. Let's say if dopamine is absent in your brain, you are going to go into depressive condition. This is the way how health and disease condition is closely connected to all our biochemical setup, both inputs, the enzymes, rate of enzyme or physicochemical aspects of enzymes, as well as products. Okay, so this is the way how, if you are able to observe or analyze the chemistry of a particular biochemical reaction, you are going to comment or otherwise analyze health or disease status and comment on the health or disease status of a particular tissue. So this is the way how biochemical reactions and health are related. So here, as you all knew, our body is like a water bubble, water containing balloon or bubble, you can say that. Inside our body, different compartments will be there. Let's say all other compartments are suspended in water. Okay, so here if you see all the chemical reactions, whatever are happening, are getting inputs and then the products are eliminated from the body. And here transport is happening. Transport is happening via some kind of a fluid. Okay, so here water is actually the main fluid that we have. But here the term fluid we are using. So here we need to segregate fluid into different compartments. Let's say one major fluid compartment that we have is blood. In blood, water content containing or the fluid containing content is actually, we call it as a plasma. That is one major compartment. The second one is interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid is the fluid that we have outside cell but inside the area other than plasma. That is what we call it as interstitial fluid. The third one is intracellular fluid, means within the cell, whatever fluidic material that we have is what we call it as intracellular fluid. Okay, so all these fluid materials are connected to each other through membranes, and the transportation is possible between all these compartments. In our body, intracellular fluid is the maximum, and after that you will find interstitial fluid, and then we will have plasma, because throughout your body, let's say if you take a 70 kg male, that is the international standard that we have, 70 kg healthy male, if you take 60% of the body fluid is water. Body contains fluids only. Okay, majority of your body weight is because of water or otherwise fluids. In that 6 liters, 5 to 6 liters of blood can be there, only 5 to 6 liters. So that's why plasma content is limited. Intracellular fluid content is more. Okay, let's say if you diet for some 2-3 days, what will happen? You will be losing weight. Okay, fluid loss will be there. Your body fluid content is going to be reduced. So when you are further not taking any kind of a fluids for 5 days, 6 days, 10 days, etc., etc., the first compartment that is going to be depleted is your plasma, and then goes to interstitial fluid, then goes to intracellular fluid. Okay, intracellular fluid is strongly retained all the time. Okay, so if you take in your body how actually the fluid is distributed, brain contains 80 to 85% of water, and lungs contain 75 to 80% of water, liver contains 70 to 75% of water, just like this, and all the remaining tissues. Okay, in blood also so much of protein will be there. If you take volume, in the volume 50% of volume is actually water. So this is the way how fluids or otherwise water is actually helping you in transport of various biochemicals throughout your body, and it is actually mainly responsible for your survival. And if you take the chemical constitution of all these, okay, so I am giving you only an outline here just to give you an idea. Okay, so in interstitial fluid as well as intracellular fluid and plasma, you can see presence of all the ions like sodium, chloride, bicarbonate, potassium, as well as proteins. And if you see their chemical constitution, there is a significant difference. Okay, in plasma or otherwise intracellular and intercellular, if you take that as an example, intracellular fluid contains, and within the cell, a very low sodium content, whereas outside you will find so much of sodium. And in plasma, maximum. And here, as far as protein is concerned, intracellular, within the cell, you will find large quantity of protein, whereas in intracellular, interstitial fluid compartment, you will find hardly any protein. Okay, because that is the highly diluted area where there is no protein. So in this way, you will find significant difference in the chemistry of various fluids, fluid compartments. So in this way, one thing that we need to understand here is, in your body, chemical constitution in various compartments is fixed, because every time when you say you are healthy, means all the biochemical reactions are happening, but at a particular rate, optimal rate. Okay, so this optimal rate is what is defining. When you are using the word optimal rate, the concentration of various chemicals that are present in that particular compartment shall also have some kind of optimal proportions. Both inputs, enzymes, as well as products shall be there at optimal proportions. So these optimal proportions are what we use them, what we call them as biochemical indicators. Okay. Reflection of health and disease in the chemistry of body fluids. So here, in simple, trivial terms, we use presence or absence of signature biochemicals is one very important indicator for defining health or disease. Second one is levels of biochemicals. Okay, in the first instance, let's say you are supposed to have glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase enzyme in your liver. Okay, G6PD enzyme. Some people lack this enzyme because of some kind of a genetic problem. So that means the person is suffering from a disease, we call it as G6PD deficiency syndrome. Sometimes glycogen synthase pathways are absent in some people. Okay, and in some people deaminase enzyme is not going to be present. Aromatic amino acid metabolism is going to be absent, or otherwise it is down regulated in those patients. So that condition means presence or absence or quantitative data is what actually defines whether a person is healthy or absent. In levels of biochemicals, simple example is your sugar level. The healthy human being shall have a sugar level close to what is the sugar level? 80 to 120 milligram per deciliter is the normal level for sugar, otherwise normal sugar level, normal glucose level. Okay, blood glucose level is this much. But here if you use if you have a level more than 129, up to 120 to 129 is the buffer area. If you have more than 129, you are prone to diabetes. Okay, you are prone to diabetes, or otherwise you will be called as pre-diabetic. And like this, the level of sugar in your blood at appropriate physiological condition is defined, it will tell you whether you are healthy or you have some kind of a disease. So in this way, the biochemical analysis is going to help us in identifying a disease. The only thing that we see here is either presence or absence kind of analysis. The second thing is quantitative. To give you a simple example, right now corona infection is coming. Okay, so how actually it is diagnosed? The blood sample is taken and then they will look for an RNA which is a signature for a virus. Okay, so by doing PCR, polymerase chain reaction, they will find out whether that RNA is there or not. Thereby they will decide whether virus is there or not at a detectable level. So here it is the first thing, presence or absence of a particular RNA. So in this way, a biochemical reaction is going to help us in diagnosis of a disease. I hope you are understanding and following this lecture. Okay. Body fluids as samples for diagnosis. Okay, so these are the various body fluids that we have. Blood, urine are very well known, sweat is also known, saliva is known to us, and then amniotic fluid for pregnant ladies. Lymph is not a very popular body fluid for sample analysis. Cerebrospinal fluid, pleural fluid, peritoneal fluid, seminal fluid, synovial fluid, all these fluids, they contain specific proportions of chemicals, specific chemicals. Okay, blood contains one type of chemistry, urine contains one type of chemistry, saliva contains one type of chemistry. Okay, so this is the way. So you may ask me how saliva can help us in disease diagnosis. Okay, saliva is a very useful diagnostic tool for protein analysis, especially amylase content. The second thing is it contains certain glucocorticoid hormones are also secreted in the saliva. So their content is going to give you some kind of a signature for health and disease condition. Okay, right now saliva is used for diagnosis of tuberculosis. Okay, so this is the way how. But actually in biochemical analysis, the chemistry is explored and the levels are measured. So whether a particular chemical is there or not is mentioned, as well as its level is also mentioned. So friends, this is the way how body fluids are going to be, these are the body fluids that are going to be used as sample for diagnosis. We will be discussing in detail about the contents as well as their significance in the coming lectures. I am giving you only an outline, introductory lecture. And methods used for analysis of body fluids. I hope all of you have entered into one or the other type of a chemistry lab by this time. Organic chemistry or inorganic chemistry or a physical lab or otherwise all these labs, where you might have seen this type of analysis like wet lab analysis. Like volumetric analysis is where you can say this one. Volumetric analysis means estimation of a particular chemical, standardization of hydrochloric acid, standardization of KMnO4 solution. All these where we use pipette and burette, etc. That type of analysis is what we call it as volumetric analysis. That type of analysis is used for some time. And instrumental analysis, like we use an instrument like spectroscopy instrument or a chromatography instrument, so that the output is used for measuring a particular biochemical or presence or absence of a particular biochemical. Third type is, in true sense, you cannot segregate it from instrumental analysis, but its principles are entirely different. So that's why we call them as immunodiagnostic techniques like radioimmunoassay or ELISA. So all these techniques right now are completely separate because they work in a kind of a principle and their applications are entirely unique. So that's why we study about them separately. So these are the three major types of techniques that we have right now in the analysis of body fluids. Okay, a lot of improvement has come and the sensitivity and accuracy, so both are increased right now, because accurate diagnosis of a patient is the first step to success of a treatment. If you are diagnosed properly, then rest assured 60% of your healing process is already over. Okay, but if wrong diagnosis is going to lead to severe side effects. Okay, if you are not diagnosed properly, no, the success rate, clinical outcome cannot come 100%. Okay, so that's the reason why diagnosis is very, very important. Significance of clinical chemistry laboratory. Okay, so clinical chemistry laboratory right now, biochemical analysis, it will give you quick and specific information regarding health or disease status of a person. Second one is, it helps in the patient specific medicine. Okay, treatment protocols. Let's say if somebody is suffering from cancer. Okay, let's say there are certain conditions are there, like the cancer is a hormone sensitive cancer, then you can use specific drugs like anti-hormones to treat it. Otherwise it will be really difficult for you to offer a specific and efficient treatment. Next one is the significance of clinical chemistry laboratory is in the drug monitoring. Let's say if somebody is suffering from hepatic inflammatory condition. Okay, so in the beginning liver parameters are taken like SGOT, SGPT, ALT and several other parameters are there, blood parameters, they are taken, and then when you start your medication, then at a period, over a period of time, the blood parameters are again evaluated to see whether drug is working or not. Disease progression or disease management. Here disease progression can also be monitored. Okay, if the liver parameters are taken, okay, today if the liver parameters are at a particular level, whether the level is increasing or decreasing can also be monitored. In this way disease progression can also be monitored. And a very very important area where biochemistry is going at rapid strides is pathogenesis and molecular mechanism study. Okay, right now corona infection has come. Okay, so right now which subject is helping in elucidating molecular mechanisms here, how actually virus is coming, how actually virus is attaching to this particular cell, and how actually it is entering into the cell, and where actually you have difference in biochemistry between present virus and then other virus particles that we have is actually biochemistry. Okay, clinical samples are taken and then it is analyzed in an appropriate manner to give us insight into the molecular mechanisms over there. Here biochemical analysis is going to significantly help us. So friends, so this is about the outline of clinical chemistry and how actually it works and what are the basic principles that we have and the kind of approach we need to have towards this subject for appropriate understanding as well as its application. Okay, so with this I conclude today's lecture. We'll meet again in the next lecture. Next lecture we'll see in detail about kidney function test, that is the 9th chapter in our medicinal biochemistry. So thank you all for your patient listening. We'll meet you again in the next lecture. Thank you.